We're joined now by the newlywed Chris Faber of Canucks Conversation and Canucks Army as we get as we get set here for the start of another Canucks season. Chris, more nervous for the wedding or more nervous for the Canucks tonight?
Honestly, the days leading up, I was probably more nervous, but the actual day was incredible, and it just went so smooth. So let's hope it goes the same for the Vancouver Canucks, I guess.
What are you most looking forward to tonight and in this season with these Canucks?
It's got to start with the penalty kill, right? And what a great way to start and be tested, or what a bad way to start and be tested, depending on how things go. I think if you can limit what 29 and 97 do tonight, it's going to be a massive step in the right direction. And yeah, we're going to see a very different Vancouver Canucks team. We're not going to see that run and gun Bruce Boudreau era anymore. How different do the Stars look under the Rick Tocchet system, I think, is going to be really interesting. Do we see Patterson get to 100 points again? Like, he's clearly got the talent to do it, but if this team is looking for team success, do they have to kind of gear down that offense a little bit? So I guess just a full season of Rick Tocchet hockey, right? I mean, Patrick Alvin, Jim Rutherford, they got all their guys here. Like, they added Laferty to kind of complete the circle, it felt like, with all these Pittsburgh guys coming in. So I'm very curious to see how this team looks with their new system here and how they can operate under it, because some of these players, I don't know if they really have the strengths of that, right? Like, a lot of them have their strengths of being big points producers. We've seen that with JT Miller, Elias Patterson, Quinn Hughes. So I know they're extremely talented players. It's just going to be interesting to see how they fit under that Rick Tocchet system.
What did you make of the Laferty trade?
Yeah, I was just on hole 17 the morning of my wedding, so didn't make a lot of it at the time. But yeah, it's some grit that they're adding, a guy who can help kill penalties, some size in the bottom six as well. And I don't know, they gave up a 5th-round pick. As a guy who loves prospects, I would love to see them keep more picks or maybe be able to acquire some as they move forward here. But it felt like they're adding a guy who's going to be in addition to the bottom six. It just, to me, feels like it's not really a bottom six player. There's a 4th-line player, let's be honest here, with Laferty. And I think he's going to bring some of that grit, which I'm excited to see. But at the same time, I can't speak too much. I haven't watched this guy a ton yet. So I guess I'm just curious to see what he brings to a lineup. And I guess we'll see it tonight. If he can add some penalty killing, that's going to be great as well. The Canucks need some help there, of course. And, he's got some size. He's got some grit. Probably going to drop the gloves for some guys here. So I think the Canucks needed that. To give up a 5th-round pick, I don't think it's the biggest deal in the world. It's just, it's not necessarily one of these trades that breaks you. It's like, okay, but I gave up a 5th here, a 4th here, a 6th here, and then, you're doing years down the road, and then you lose a lot of that draft capital, which can be so valuable when you need it down the road. So I don't know. Right now, it feels fine, but, come around the draft next year, if they're only picking twice in 7 rounds, might be a little bit worrisome then.
We went through the history of yesterday, the day before,
and the problem is
they don't usurp 7 picks ever.
Well, and the problem is like, like you traded one for Kraftsov, he's gone. You traded one for Bear, he's gone.
Yeah.
So it's when you lose the player in short order,
nothing to show for
then,
it. There's a lot of noise around this team, and it seems really unfortunate because I think they did enough this offseason, Chris, where there's a lot of optimism, going into this season, not for Stanley Cup necessarily, but just for better days ahead. And then Mikheyev injury and Soucy injury and Garland requesting a trade. And it's like, this feels like old times. This feels like the previous incarnations. The more things change, the more things stay the same.
Yeah, I mean, they did a really good job throughout the preseason, not making a lot of noise until basically the preseason ended, right? As soon as the regular season started around the NHL, the Canucks got back into the news. They haven't fired anyone lately, so that's been good. And I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens here. But it is quite the interesting situation with Conor Garland here, as he's now on the top line, which is something we didn't see throughout preseason. Now we hear that he's changed agents. I think it's been out there pretty obvious that Conor Garland might be better in a different city, right? He might make more sense on a different NHL team. Maybe doesn't have that fit with the Vancouver Canucks, and especially with the Rick Tocchet system. Though he's had some success in Arizona, you can go back to that. I just think he's in a spot now where all that stuff and the noise outside of hockey, and he kind of talked about this yesterday. Well, now he's just got to perform. Like, don't let the noise be something that even gets brought up. Go out there and play with Elias Patterson and Andrei Kuzmenko and create some damn offense, right? He's got an opportunity to do that here. He's not a guy who's going to be on the first power play unit, but he's a key piece of that second power play unit, a spot where I don't think he's had a ton of success in a Vancouver Canucks jersey on the power play. But I think the reason he's up there on that top line is what he can do at 5-on-5. And you know, if he can work those spins into being something that can help with Andrei Kuzmenko and Elias Pettersson, like we might just see those three spinning around like it's a ballet today, right? Like all three of those guys have these type of moves. It'll be interesting to see how they click together, because that's something that I don't think we've seen with Conor Garland. He's found a fit when he's kind of the spotlight maybe is a little bit on him on the line. Like when he's driving a third line, you can do all those things. You can be the guy that everyone's looking towards to create offense. Now he's kind of not really the creator. He's kind of a guy that needs to fit, right?
But imagine, Chris, though, if it does work out. What if they do create Barishnikov out there? What he's going to want out? He's on the top line playing with like a potential Hart Trophy candidate, and the team's going to want to trade him. They find a good fit with him on the, like. I just don't know what the best case scenario is here for everybody.
I have a feeling his non-answer, his denial, whatever you want to call it, from yesterday was probably rooted in the fact of, oh shoot, I'm on the top line.
Yeah.
Maybe I need not rock the boat. Do you see an easy resolution on this, Chris, or do you think this is something that can drag with Garland?
An easy answer would be just have success. Go out and do it, right? Like what other opportunity? Every player on that roster would love to be in the spot that Conor Garland is in tonight. He's going up against maybe not this part, going up against Connor McDavid tonight. Maybe not every guy wants that role, but he is playing with Elias Pettersson and Andrei Kuzmenko, two guys who, you know, could score 40 this year. We could see one of those guys get over 100 points again. There's nothing else you could ask for as a winger to play with Elias Pettersson and Andrei Kuzmenko. You have to produce in this spot. So he can make a lot of this noise go away with just being successful in a role that's been given to him that is just put on a platter for him to ease into success. There's not a lot being asked of you at this point. You don't have to really play up. You just need to play around these guys. And if you can do that with Elias Pettersson and Kuzmenko, I mean, anybody would love for this role. Vasily Podkolzin's going to be, you know, heading back to the AHL and not getting an opportunity. He would have loved to be in the spot. You know, Nils Höglander had this spot at the start of camp. I bet he wishes he was in the position that Conor Garland is in. So, yeah, I think that if he doesn't have success, he'll be moving down the lineup, and I don't think that's the worst thing either, right? Like, I don't know if Conor Garland on the top line is the best thing for the Vancouver Canucks to have success. I think he's a guy who does drive a third line pretty well. I think that's what he does well at 5-on-5, and he can be a guy that goes into your top six in a pinch. So maybe the pinch right now is they're just waiting for Mikheyev to come back, right? Like that makes a lot of sense to me, is kind of just a holding position now. They used Nils Höglander throughout preseason in that holding spot. Now they're into NHL. They're into the regular season. Feels like Garland might be holding that for Mikheyev a little bit until he's fully healthy as well. So might be a 2-game thing here.
Yeah, so maybe the trade request goes away like Besser, or maybe he produces well enough that somebody looks to take on the 3 years and $17 million that's left on the contract.
Chris, are you sad that
onerous?
Are you sad that nobody else was able to win a spot? Like none of the young players were able to outright grab a spot and say, "I'm ready." There was room for the defenseman or for Höglander or Podkolzin to do that at the very least, and nobody really sees the brass ring there.
Yeah, I mean, the guys that were most impressive who were kind of in that mix to me were like Aatu Räty and Arshdeep Bains. And let's be honest, neither of those guys were going to make this NHL team, right? You wanted to see Podkolzin, who's the level above, or Nils Höglander, the level above, or even Dakota Joshua. Jack Studnicka, I thought was pretty good too, but none of them really did enough. And I think that's the unfortunate thing, was they had the opportunity. When the opportunity is there, you got to seize it when you're in that spot. And we're going to probably hear from the coach talking about, you know, they had a really good training camp, and yeah, sure, probably the team did, but there's some individuals that you wanted to see show something in preseason. I didn't see enough scoring in the bottom six throughout the preseason. That's something that we're going to have to see as the year goes on and the regular season begins. But aside from like Phil DiGiuseppe might be the best story of a guy who, you know, we could make the argument that he was in the conversation to be like a 13th forward heading into camp. He is the guy who's now hopping into the top six. He's getting that crazy opportunity to play with JT Miller and Brock Besser. That's kind of the good story of somebody actually seizing the opportunity. I think he was second in scoring throughout the preseason as well with PDG. So you could say that he's one of the guys that did it, but you're right, with the young guys, like, you just didn't see enough, right? And a lot of these players we were talking about them last year as having a breakout season, right? Vasily Podkolzin's all over the cover of the NHL.com article about breakout guys. And okay, maybe we push that a year. Just didn't happen. And I think he's going to go down to the AHL. He's going to get the opportunity. I think all that's going to be great, but this felt like a season when you see a 22-year-old, 23-year-old, these type of guys who are first and second round picks it's time to wake up in training camp. And I don't know if we saw enough of that from the young guys trying to earn themselves an NHL job this preseason.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I still have hopes for Höglander, though. I wonder if he's got some upward mobility in this patchwork lineup while Mikheyev is hurt. And of course, we don't know the status of Bluger as we record this either. What did you make of, well, if Elias doesn't want to commit to us, maybe we won't commit to him? That very odd report from Elliot Friedman. Like, can you find a reason why they wouldn't want to commit to Elias Patterson? Is there any world where last year was an outlier for Elias Patterson, Chris? What did you make of that whole scenario?
I don't know. I think that's one that a rumor that goes somewhere. Maybe you hear it differently from somebody and you kind of spin it, throw out a tweet. And I don't know if it's really truth. I don't think the Canucks are hesitant at all to sign Elias Pettersson to whatever contract he wants. I think there's a lot of stuff that goes out, especially for the Vancouver Canucks. That one just feels just like noise to me. I think that why would they not want to commit to Elias Pettersson, a guy that, wants to win more than anything. And as an NHL organization, that's what you want to do as well. He's also one of the best players in the world at one of the best positions that it's, very difficult to fill as a 1C. I can't see any truth behind this. I can't see the Canucks being hesitant at all to Elias Pettersson. So I'm sure that, that report had a lot of whatever source told you that. I'm sure that somebody said something, but I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
Well, it was an Elliot Friedman report from the 32 Thoughts podcast. And I do wonder whether they're just some noses and egos that are out of joint with the Canucks that Elias doesn't want to commit to them, at least right now. And so somehow, some way that gets turned into, well, maybe we wouldn't want to commit to him, which, like, the Canucks need Elias Pettersson way more than Elias Pettersson needs the Canucks. Mm-hmm. Everybody knows that, right? Like, so, yeah.
They have committed to JT Miller. Harm got some great quotes out of him talking about how he just gives a shit. And that's why he looks like he does, and that it might be a dying art form a little bit. And that he thinks that he's got it under control for this year. Do you expect to see a different JT Miller when the live bullets start flying here?
I mean, he's talking about it. Well, we'll see what happens when he's actually on the ice and in the locker room with us after 3 losses in a row. We'll see how different he is. I think that I think JT Miller. I mean, we saw it with Ryan Kessler, and this gets brought up a lot. But that type of personality can be really good. That can be really good to an NHL team. It can also, when you're riding the highs, it's great, but when you're going into the lows, it's difficult. So I think he's a player who, if he gets back to being a 90-plus point scorer. He's contributing on the first power play unit, getting all this opportunity with the top guys, and now playing center, right? Like, if you think back to his season of 99 points, a lot of time on the wing there. He was very successful doing it on the wing. And if he's able to just stay at center and be that 2C moving forward, I think that's great. In terms of his personality, I don't think I want him to change. I like when this guy, I like what he brings to this group of young players who, they're learning leadership. And I think it helps these young guys kind of learn how to deal with JT Miller a little bit too, right? Like learning that, yes, this guy's a little bit of an older veteran, but they're also part of this core as much as he is, if not more, with Elias Pettersson and Quinn Hughes, who I'm talking about.
It does need a tweak though, right? Like, I agree. Like the energy, the overall, the overall energy that he exudes, I think is good. It's useful, but I think he can tweak it so that it's far more constructive than it's been where at times it's been destructive.
Yeah. Do you guys remember that ever happening with Kessler, though? Like, was there a change at some point in
a maturity sort of thing, or a realization of how to calibrate the energy? I feel like it got there eventually.
It got better.
Yeah.
And they worked with him a lot. I mean,
showing the video, you can't dive here, all that sort of stuff. So they were active. The organization was active in tweaking him. I wonder, I haven't heard any active reports about that, but like how much has the organization tried to sculpt him a little bit?
So I think with Rick Tocchet, in my point of view here, I think Rick Tocchet's the perfect guy for that. I think he's a tough guy who did a lot of things in the NHL at a very high level. And it was interesting, listening to him when he was on with Frank Saravalli, like that second game when they lost to Seattle, and Tocchet's freaking out, right? He said he was on the corner of a street here in Vancouver, pissed off, and Sergei Gonchar had to calm him down. Like, I wonder if that teaches Tocchet a lesson to be able to expand that onto his players. And I think when a coach is dealing with somebody, whether it be, anger or just emotion that they're building off of, curious to see what Tocchet deals with JT Miller. I think that, it's kind of been joked about, but like, I can see Rick Tocchet being the JT Miller whisperer. Like, I can see it. I can just see them clicking well when they start to have success. If success isn't coming, then it's going to be a little bit more difficult. But if they're able to have success, I think it's going to be really interesting to watch that relationship grow, because I get the feeling from dealing with Rick and talking, with him every single day, it feels like now. I just think he's going to be the guy who's going to be able to help JT Miller find that level. I don't know if it's going to be perfect. I think when things go bad, JT Miller might go bad certain times with his emotions and stuff. But in the end, I like it. Like, I like that fieriness, and I like that he's not the kind of main point that the Canucks are looking towards to be the leader as well. Like, now that you have Quinn Hughes, let it fall onto him. He is a very calm guy to go out there and talk to a ref about whatever. We're going to talk to him a lot after post games, but I just think that, and from reading some of Harman's article as well, yeah, like I like the style that JT Miller at least talked about with Harm. Do I think he's changed? We'll see. We'll see what happens this season, but I think they're in a position to at least see him be at his best with those emotions. And I don't know if it's going to happen in a first game of the season happens, but as we go on here with Rick Tocchet and the system and structure and all the other words that they use that aren't very exciting, I think they'll fit in nicely, and we'll see what happens this year.
I know you guys at Canucks Army have done some work on this, but Elliot Friedman, again, reporting today the Canucks are peaking at defense options around the league. And I do wonder whether there's a double entendre with his choice of verbs there. Peak, because you guys identified Columbus, where Jarmo Kekalainen has said we've got a glutted defenseman and we're willing to move guys out. Explain, Chris.
Yeah, and Frank Saravalli's reported it as well. I mean, it's interesting. I thought that this would be going down a couple of days ago, right before the actual salary cap was set for each team. So I find it, like, in my eyes, I feel like it would be harder once you've set your salary cap to kind of move towards making a trade, especially of significance, if you're going to end up moving a winger. I also think that, the Blue Jackets, they might be in for a winger. Maybe Conor Garland is the guy in there, but all the reports and everything that you're kind of hearing, it sounds like the problem with Conor Garland being traded is the money, and how much would the Canucks be willing to hold on to for the next 3 seasons. And yeah, you can probably find a defenseman on the market. We'll see if the Canucks run out of 5th-round picks on finding a guy who's a 7 on some other team, which is wild to think that a 7 on a different team might end up playing on the top pairing with Quinn Hughes. But those guys are out there, right? Like, there are guys out there. Is Dante Faber now a 7th defenseman with Nashville? You have a lot of right shot guys with Columbus. Peak's obviously the one that kind of brings up a lot of excitement from Canucks fans, just seeing like a tall right shot defenseman who might be able to hop in and play. But anything feels like an upgrade, right? Like, I mean, with Noah Juleson or Cole McWard, these guys that we've seen on waivers, how many guys have passed by where you're thinking, that's an upgrade, that's an upgrade. I have more faith in this guy playing with Quinn Hughes. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I was a little surprised that we didn't get a deal done kind of yesterday or the day before, just leading up to the season. It's a weird spot. They practiced with 5 defensemen yesterday. I'm heading down to the rink in a few minutes here to go see what's going on, who's on the ice to play. Like, they got to make a call up. I got burned by this last time I was on with you guys because the show came out a little bit later. I saw the YouTube comments. So hopefully by then, or by now when you're watching this, they've called up a defenseman. I don't think they're rolling out with 5, but we'll have to see what happens here.
Lastly, Chris, we'll do this every Wednesday with you. Your Canucks prospect of the week. Who shined or shone in the last week?
Yeah,
we had Canucks youngsters.
Well, I got to give a shout out to Dave Hall, who covered for my Blackfish Report, which is what we do over at Canucks Army every Tuesday, the Prospect Report. Dave did an incredible job. He's a great follow on Twitter. He's beating me to clips right now, which is kind of pissing me off a little bit, Dave. I'm coming for you.
I've noticed he's made his way into hashtags here on the show as well. So
yeah, he's been excellent. A huge addition to Canucks Army. I'm going to go with Hunter Brustevich out of the OHL. So back-to-back OHL defenseman for us here with Prospect of the Week. Brustevich had 2 goals and 1 assist this past weekend. He's a Kitchener Ranger defenseman who the Vancouver Canucks just took in the most recent NHL draft, 3rd-round pick. Right shot guy, and with Brustevich scoring 2 goals and adding an assist, the Canucks still have 2 OHL defensemen in the top 5 of defense scoring right now. So looking good in the OHL. It's been a lot of fun to watch him so far. He's a guy that, like, when I watched him in his draft year and watched some of the highlights, especially after they drafted him, watching a few games of his, I was like, oh, he's going to move the puck. He's going to be a power play 1 guy in the OHL, which is great. That's all great to see. But then watching him in the World Junior Summer Showcase this summer, he's killing penalties. He's doing a lot more. And now you see him in the OHL. He's playing like 22 to 27 minutes a game so far when I've been watching him. Brustevich has been really impressive. The way he moves the puck, you could see him kind of fitting in even at main camp. Like, oh, he snaps it, right? Like, you can you can just feel the defenseman who can snap the puck like that. They just look a little bit different. Brustevich is that guy right now, and some of the passes he had a 4-point night the other weekend. So he's off to a great start in the OHL and picking up a pair of goals over the weekend as well as an assist last Wednesday. He's going to be my my prospect of the week.
Awesome. 82 of these to go, Chris. Thanks for your time here today. We'll catch up next Wednesday.
You betcha, fellas. Thanks very much for having me.
This clip brought to you by Whistler Golf Club. If you have a group of 12 or more, the group organizer plays for free. Inquire now at whistlergolf.com/groups.